Greetings, vinyl community, and welcome to another VC Friday. And this week, guess what? I've got some records to show. How about that for a change? Going to start with this 1987 album by the German improvising experimental guitarist and instrument builder Hans Reichel, and his album The Dawn of Daxman. And the title is a reference to his creation, the daxophone or daxophone. And there's a picture of one example here. The daxophone consists of a carved wooden strip, which is called the tongue, and then this device that's rolled over the tongue that's called a dax, and the tongue is attached to a resonating square and played with a bow. So we've got the bow up top. And the daxophone, spelled D-A-C-H-S here, he later changed it to D-A-X, is a little bit related to Hans Reichel's outside of music business, because he was also a typesetter and font creator. So if you're in the typesetting business and you've ever used the FF Dax font, well, Hans Reichel is where that came from. And to give you an idea of Hans Reichel's approach to the guitar, I first encountered his music on this 1976 release, Guitar Solos 2, which is split among 4 different guitarists, and I was attracted by Fred Frith being the really known quantity, and then discovered G.F. Fitzgerald, Hans Reichel, and Derek Bailey is on here. I already knew Derek Bailey as well. But Hans Reichel on here is, you can see there's a little diagram of what he's done, where he's got 2 guitars pointing in opposite directions, and then he throws the bodies away and connects the necks with a pickup in the middle and plays this kind of dual bodiless guitar. So obviously not your standard approach to the instrument. And on this album, we definitely get a lot of very outside guitar work. Found this one at Rasputin's in Berkeley. Next, from 1968, Sandy's album is here at last. The first album by Sandy Hurvitz, and the only album under that name. Sandy Hurvitz is better known as Ezra Mohawk, who made this wonderful album for Warner Brothers, Primordial Lovers, and a whole host of other things during her lifetime. But this album is on Verve, and you'll notice that she's being announced by Frank Zappa. And it's kind of funny that Frank Zappa is on the cover, because Sandy Hurvitz was briefly a sort of semi-official member of the Mothers of Invention during the Garrick Theater days in New York City. And he would introduce her on stage as Uncle Meat. So that's where that phrase came from that later became an album title. Well, Frank was set to produce this album, but had a falling out with Sandy. She apparently tried to tell him what to do about a certain arrangement. She wanted Billy Mundy to play the drums a certain way, because Frank had the Mothers of Invention backing her up. Frank didn't like being told what to do, so he left in a huff, assigned the production work to Ian Underwood, and Sandy wasn't terribly impressed with what he came up with, but here it is, and it's an album mostly without the mother's invention, of course. It's mostly solo Sandy on voice and piano. She is accompanied on a few tracks by members of Jeremy and the Satyrs. We have Jeremy Steig on flute, and Eddie Gomez on bass, and Donald McDonald on drums. Also, Jim Pepper plays saxophone. But they don't play very much on the album. They're only on some tracks, which is pretty much for the best because it's really not the most sympathetic accompaniment. Especially Donald McDonald's drumming does not fit in with what Sandy is doing here. So mostly a solo album. We've got Sandy looking wistful on the back and some of the lyrics down the side. We've got the amazing song title, Arch Godliness of Purpleful Magic, which is the track that caused Sandy and Frank Zappa to fall out. And then on this cover, I noticed that Frank, even though he's a picture within a picture, his eyes are off camera both ways. Sandy's eyes are staring off into the abyss. She looks pretty wasted, and the only one who seems to be looking into the camera is the cat.
There came 3 holes a-circling, but only 2 remained above. While I stood there beneath them, so deeply in love, so deeply in love.
A couple of weeks ago, I talked about prepared piano music by John Cage. Well, here's another album of prepared piano music, this time by Jessica Williams, the jazz pianist. Jessica Williams, like Frank Zappa, was born in Baltimore, but established her musical career in California. She gigged with a lot of jazz greats. Mentioned on the back cover here are Philly Joe Jones, Dexter Gordon, Stan Getz, Tony Williams, Charlie Rouse, Jackie McLean, Roy Haynes, Charlie Hayden, and Bobby Hutcherson. She was the house pianist at the Keystone Corner in San Francisco, a venue that Mazzy mentions a lot, so he's probably shared a space with her a time or two. There's her photo on the back cover. This is a posthumous release. She passed away in 2022. This album is from last year, 2025. And although very experimental in approach, the music has a strong melodic and rhythmic feel. So it's not really out there and abstract, not avant-garde like the John Cage stuff, but it still has a really unusual tonality to it and a lot of strange clattering, but still a melodic and peaceful sound to a lot of the music. A couple of the tracks are homages to artists. There's a portrait of Picasso and a portrait of Matisse, which are both cat names my sister used. And this was an online purchase from Pre-Echo Records. I purchased it from their Bandcamp. Next up is another release from 2025, and it is Wolf Eyes with Anthony Braxton. The album is untitled. There are no track titles. There are no side indications. It's all just find your own way. Wolf Eyes is the electronic noise duo of Johnny Olson and Nate Young. And Anthony Braxton, of course, plays alto, sopranino, and bass saxophones on this recording. It's a live recording from Pioneer Works in Red Hook, New York. This is the second collaboration between Wolf Eyes and Anthony Braxton. The first was the unappealingly titled Black Vomit. That one came out on CD. Wolf Eyes has been insanely prolific over the years, but most of their releases are on CDRs. So not a lot of vinyl to show, but this one's got a really nice cover, I think. Sort of a deconstructed Civil War scene here, I think. And the artwork is by, where is it? Matthew Zivich, and it's titled Down Yonder Blue from 2009. So last week, when speaking about the Bongo Fury album, I had occasion to mention the Captain Beefheart albums from the period when he was managed and produced by Andy DiMartino, and made a couple of decidedly subpar albums, and had a little conversation in the comments with our friend Pete from Sounds from the West Coast about Unconditionally Guaranteed, which is clearly the better of the two. And wouldn't you know, I went right out and ran into a copy, and here it is. I found this at Lloyd's Records in Oakland, along with the Sandy Hurvitz album. This is from 1974, and it is still with the Magic Band, who basically walked out after they heard how this turned out with the production. We have Zoothorn Rollo, or Bill Harkleroad, on guitar, Art Tripp on drums, Rockette Morton, or Mark Boston, on bass, Mark Marcelino on keyboards, and Alex St. Clair on guitar, Captain Beefheart on vocals and harmonica, alias Don Van Vliet, and Andy DiMartino chimes in on acoustic guitar, and Del Simmons added on tenor sax and flute. By far the best track on here is the opening track, Upon the My Oh My, which rocks the hardest and has some of Captain Beefheart's old menace. Most of the songs, though, are silly love songs that just are nothing like what Captain Beefheart had produced before. It's unclear who actually did the lion's share of the writing. The very simple love song lyrics don't sound like something that Don Vliet would come up with. All the tracks are credited to Don Vliet, Jan Vliet, and Andy DiMartino. So I think there's a fiction there in terms of who wrote the songs, and the credits are just a way to split up the royalties according to whatever agreement was made. But Upon the My Oh My, great storming, menacing song. Magic Bee, kind of sweet and psychedelic. Peaches has a bit of funk to it, but mostly this is, New Electric Ride. That at least sounds like a Captain Beefheart song title. But mostly just very simple love songs like I Got Love on My Mind and This Is the Day. There's Captain Beefheart himself with the slogan, Love Over Gold. Unfortunately, I'm afraid this album was a bit of a case of gold over music.
Magic being magic, magic being sunshine, magic being moonlight, magic being you and me, magic being every hour, darling, you're with me.
So speaking of Captain Beefheart, about 6 or 7 months ago, I went to a performance of Captain Beefheart's music at the chapel in San Francisco, and it was a performance of the entire Safe as Milk album, plus assorted other beefy goodness, and it was hosted by Robyn Hitchcock. It wasn't actually a Robyn Hitchcock concert because it was a review format with a revolving cast of singers and musical guests. Chuck Prophet sang, Black Dahlia from the Dwarves sang, Cyril Jordan from the Flamin' Groovies made a guest appearance on guitar, and that was great. It was a great show, and I need to get back into Robyn Hitchcock. I was a big fan of his earlier albums, but at some point I just kind of fell off the bus, and it was for no reason. It's not like he made an album that I didn't like or anything like that. His stuff has always been great. I just kind of forgot. So he has a couple of new albums coming out that I have both on pre-order. There's going to be a live one next month, and then a new studio album coming out the month after that. But I found this at Off the Record in San Mateo here. And in 1996, Robyn Hitchcock made the album Moss Elixir. And that didn't come out on vinyl. That was a CD. But concurrent with that, he made this vinyl release called Mossy Liquor. And this contains 6 alternate versions and demos of songs from Moss Elixir, plus 6 completely new tracks. Fine stuff. It's the cover of Moss Elixir on the back and the back cover of Moss Elixir on the front, and it includes a lyric sheet with the cat, who also appears in the Moss Elixir packaging. I wonder if he knows Sandy Hurvitz's cat, because he's certainly looking straight into the camera like hers did. Great stuff. Excellent pop music with the humor and surrealism that Robyn Hitchcock is known for. Distinct Beatles psychedelic influence on the track Beautiful Queen. Cool Bug Rumble, a great bluesy track there. There's an excellent guitar instrumental where Hitchcock plays sort of in the style of John Renbourn or someone like that. Really fun album. Nice to have some Robyn Hitchcock on vinyl for a change.
Got a right tomato here in ecstasy. Got a little apple in your eye. As if you had it all. As if you had no belly. You are on my skin, and so am I.
Next, I have kind of a follow-up to the album I showed a few weeks ago by the Fugs. Picked this one up to add to my ESP collection, Virgin Fugs. This is the album that came after the self-titled second album, but is actually leftovers from the Fugs' first album. So you know that if it wasn't polished enough to go on the Fugs' first album, it's pretty rough stuff. This is an incredibly crude album in every sense of the word. It ironically says on the back, for adult minds only, because a lot of the content on here is pretty childish, and musically, This is a really strong contender. I think it has to be the one for the worst album in my entire collection. But there's still some fun to be had. They certainly have some imposing names they've collaborated with. The last track on here, I Saw the Best Minds of My Generation Rot, is a rollicking interpretation of Allen Ginsberg's Howl, and it is credited to Allen Ginsberg with music by Ed Sanders. And to definitely one-up that, side 1, track 4, is co-written by God. It's the Ten Commandments, as interpreted by Tuli Kupferberg. This actually is an album that just has always kind of stuck in my mind. It's a cover that I remember. That's another strong collaboration because the torso of the figure is William Blake. But it's a cover that I remember from back in my teenage days when I was kind of exploring Frank Zappa and Captain Beefheart and trying to learn of some music that was off the beaten path. But I remember seeing these old ESP Fugs albums, and this one in particular, and the other one I showed. Also, I remember the titles from that one. I remember the cover from this one, seeing them at the little discount records store at the Fashion Valley Mall and wondering what the hell they were about. But instead, I walked out of the store with, we're only in it for the money, and I'm pretty sure I made the right decision there. Warner Reprise kind of lumped the Fugs in with Zappa and Beefheart with their Loss Leader albums, where they would always have one side of the album that was devoted to their underground music. So they would have a Captain Beefheart track, a Mothers of Invention track, and the Fugs would be on there. But this is from before the Fugs' stint on Reprise, when they were even rougher and wilder and insanely scatological, and we've got stuff like Saran Wrap, My Bed Is Getting Crowded, and Coca-Cola Douche are just total locker room goofs. One track that's got a bit of, the closest thing to being something serious happening musically is I Command the House of the Devil, which is a great title. It sounds like something Rocky Erickson would have come up with. And this is an original first pressing, I believe, on ESP. And picked this one up at Amoeba Records in Berkeley for very cheap. But it does not contain any inserts, which I believe came with the original. But this is the Fugs, recorded in 1965, released in 1967, and oh boy.
I don't have a bedtime, I don't need to come, for I have become an amphetamine bum. If you don't like sleeping and don't want to screw, then you should take lots of amphetamine too.
I command the house of the devil. The killers and gougers, the butchers and freaks, dope demons and creeps. The goddess of a cancer sits on the left. The king of napalm lives on the right. The hound of orchids sucks in the center, eating our brains in the night.
And speaking of records I got for cheap, I found this one in the bargain bin at 1234 Go Records in Oakland for a mere $2. Ronald Shannon Jackson Pulse from 1984. Powerhouse drummer, powerhouse player, and this is basically a solo drum record. There is some spoken word stuff, a lot of poetry. There's a long track on side 1 that draws from Shakespeare and Edgar Allan Poe. There's some other poetic contributions, mostly Ronald Shannon Jackson himself reciting while playing the drums. which I don't know. That's not the ideal combination, the way he plays, because his playing is not delicate and not conducive to good breath control when you're doing public speaking. A couple of the tracks have Michael S. Harper doing the voice parts, and after almost the entire album is just high energy, furious drumming, it ends on a much softer and nostalgic note with the very brief track Those Winter Sundays, with a poem by Robert Hayden, spoken by Michael S. Harper, and Shannon Jackson, instead of playing drums, is playing just brushes and toms. And the last piece is a 2-minute solo piano piece, Lullaby for Mother, performed by Onaje Allen Gums. So, kind of an interesting left turn there for the album's spirit, but after the exhausting drumming that covers most of it, there you go. It's on the celluloid label and comes with a little lyric sheet, no less. So, Ronald Shannon Jackson, Pulse. So that's your lot. That's VC Friday. Thanks very much for watching. Be well. Don't forget to go to my Bandcamp and buy some albums. Don't forget. Be well and be safe. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye for now.